Hello again and welcome back to the channel Amanda Gets Growing. Now in the video I did a couple of weeks back about just in the aftermath of Storm Amy, where I was trying to plant some Mizuna plants, I noticed that I had a few comments in the comment section about my style. Very kind of you to notice, guys. No, I don't mean that. No, it's about my growing style and about how I like to grow in mixed beds rather than having like specific areas for certain crops or having like, everything in a line like you see in an allotment. Now, I've been growing that way for many years and I kind of forgot that that's not normal to everyone and it might look a bit strange to some people. So I want to explain why I grow in that style and what the benefits I think there are of doing that. So what do I mean then by mixed beds? Well, this bed here is, I think, a perfect example of what I mean. Now there's all sorts of plants mixed in here. I've got herbs, so there's sage here. I've got perennial brassicas and kale at the back. I've got Mizuna, chard, pak choi that are all annuals. Actually, that's the first time I've grown pak choi. I'm quite excited about that. I'm a little bit concerned that they might be a magnet for slugs, hence why I've got the old beer traps out. But yeah, I've got literally everything happening in this space. And you know what? These plants are all really happy growing alongside each other. Now, what I really like about growing in a mixed bed versus growing in rows, and why I think it works really well for a small garden, is that basically when a plant is finished, I can just take the plant out and put a new plant in. And I think that when you grow in rows, the tendency is to wait for the whole row to be harvested before you replant with something else. And then of course you've got space there that you're not utilising, which is the last thing you want in a smaller garden. Now, if you think about this way of growing, it also mimics how plants grow in nature. And I think that only has to be beneficial to them. I mean, it's quite weird really to have like a monoculture in nature where you only have one plant growing by itself. Plants generally have evolved to grow alongside each other and they do really well that way. And I think one of the things that's really good is if you have a mixed bed like this, you can't see it, but I've got some nasturtiums and things at the back that brings the pollinators in. So, you know, they'll come in and they'll pollinate also any vegetables that I've got growing here that need pollination. In addition to that, there's pest control. You know, if you've got plants scattered across the garden, it's much harder for the pests to find all of those plants. And you might find that the pest finds one of them or two of them, but you'll probably have a few that actually survive. And my favourite example is, say, a row of lettuce. If you have a row of lettuce and a slug comes along, he's just going to keep munching. But if you've got the lettuce spread apart, there's just a chance that that lettuce over there in the far corner, it might survive. So I think it works really well for that too. The other thing to say in terms of soil health is that if you always grow the same crop in the same area, you're obviously depleting the soil of the same nutrients. Whereas if you're swapping plants in and out, you can be pretty sure that you're not doing that and that you're maintaining a good nutrient level without having to do too much planning like crop rotation and things like that. That gets quite complicated. One of the things I really enjoy about this growing style of using mixed beds is that I don't have to stick to a rigid plan, like a rigid growing schedule. And that means that I'm able to be much more creative and flexible in the garden. You know, it's much easier to swap things in and out, to try new varieties, experiment with growing plants in different areas. And that's really what gives me joy. I think as adults, we spend our lives sticking to very rigid rules, schedules, all of that. I just don't want any of that in the garden. I just want to have fun and have joy, and it really works for me. Now, I totally get it that it's not for everyone. And of course, even if I say there isn't a plan, I do still always need to be thinking ahead and thinking, you know, a few months in advance, because that's what gardening is like, right? You have to think about the next season and get your seeds sown and all of that. Now, if you've always grown in the traditional way of using, you know, very fixed rows, monoculture beds, how about just giving this a go? Find one little area of your garden and just throw all the plants in and see how they do. I'm pretty sure that the plants are healthier and happier growing this way, and I really think it's worth a try.